Shalom and good day all, this is Tehillim29 back again for manga I have recently read through, and this is some bigger size manga that I have read between September, October, November, mainly October to November, and I'll go through the titles quickly to show you what I've been reading through. First of all, we have Spriggan, then we've got Soichi. We've got Terraman and Vagabond Volume 3. I will have to get a hold of Volume 4 onwards. We have a bit of a graphic novel in here, which is Wind Volume 3, World Peace Volume 3, and apparently the next one after that, Volume 4, is going to be the last one of this series, which is going to be really interesting to see how it ends. And of course, we have some Shuzo Ashimi, Blood on the Tracks, Volumes 13 and 14. There are still more volumes to this to come out. And if you haven't already seen on the channel, my review for Pluto, this too has also been in my reading in this time, to which I really enjoyed what I read here, that I read it twice over, just so I knew what to expect when the anime was to come out. Moving into a bit of manhwa, some Korean related webtoons stories. So we've got the Wayne Family Adventures from the webtoons. We also have the Heavenly Demon Reborn, which is actually connected to webtoons or manhwa or Korean storytelling. Back into some manga, we have Goodbye Eerie, which is a very interesting story having to do with the main character who is seeing his mother basically go through her last stages of life, and from then how he begins to move on after that. And one of the things that are pointed out in the story is how he uses his camera to sort of like captures his mother's last moments, but also how he deals with the events after her death and how he creates new memorable moments. Next, we have Blue Lock, which has been a really fun soccer related manga that I've been reading right now. I must admit, if it hasn't been for some of these sport mangas, I wouldn't have been able to get into some sports animated or some sports anime. And when I've got the time, I'm gonna have to put up my reviews for some sports anime that I have been watching on the channel. Blue Lock, I'm afraid to say, is not one of them, but I should get around to it. And last but not least, we have Trojan X. Alright, I'll now basically go in reverse in regards to rating, but in regards to the manga rating, please look up on the channel, or especially for Pluto, please search Pluto, or search for Pluto in my channel. Watch the manga review and you'll get my review and rating of the story. So, moving into Trojan X, this one actually felt a little bit slower than the last two volumes. Of course, we still get the follow the main character, but we've got like other little events taking place. So for this one, I feel it's dropped to about a 7.5. Moving into Volume 8 of Blue Lock. This story keeps getting better and better, as I really enjoy how it gives the audience, whether you might be someone that's into soccer or not, it gives an understanding of how the game works and how the game works within this story and these characters. For this, an 8 out of 10. I'm looking forward to the next volume. Goodbye Eerie. This was a very sad story, but even though it did have its sad points, it also had its points where it tried to cheer up the main character. And you do get to see that. For this, I'll give a 7.5 out of 10. Moving into Heavenly Demon Reborn, it's really nice to catch up with this series again, as it's been a while since I read through the first volume. One thing I would have sort of liked at the beginning of this was sort of like a catch up of events that happened in the last volume. But apart from that, when we do move into the main story and we do catch up with the main character, it did begin to move and flow quite well with what they were delivering in the story, what they had planned in the first one. So for this, an 8 out of 10. Batman Wayne Family Adventures, 10 out of 10. Check it out. Absolutely enjoy the art and the stories. But my only smallest criticism for Volume 2 is that they fail to be consistent, especially at the end of the first, where the first volume was consistent and showed where you could read these characters. In the second one, it didn't. But overall, it is a really enjoyable series, especially if you're someone who's a bit of a fan of the Bat family. I'm looking forward to getting Volume 3. Moving into Blood on the Tracks, to which this story follows, of course, its main character and also how he has sort of like been manipulated by his mother. It takes place a little bit after he has sort of like served time in jail, and now he just does not want to live at all. I'll leave it at that. I advise you check it out if you're into that type of storytelling. I am finding this story interesting at most. I think it was stronger in its earlier parts compared to some of the later parts. So hopefully the story will pick up just towards the end. Now, jumping up for my rating for it, I cannot forget it, about an 8 out of 10. Moving into Vagabond, oh my goodness, I need to get more of this series. And I've also got Dimox to thank for it, especially here in Australia. I remember when I first dropped into Dimox, it had been a long time, and one of the manga that was recommended to me to check out was, guess what, Vagabond. So since that time, I've found the time to get a hold of volumes 1, 2, and 3. I'm now going to have to get a hold of 4 onwards. I like how they're sort of like working on the characterization of the character who would be known as Miyamoto Musashi in the storyline. For that, I give an 8 out of 10. Soichi, oh my goodness. This is the whole Junji Ito stories around the character of Soichi. Very interesting character, I must admit. If anything, he's more like a comedy-like character in a horror story, but yes, he's weird. One thing I'd like to learn, though, is what happened at the end with him meeting that certain person, and who exactly is his father? Because there's someone that appears in one of the stories, and you'd almost swear that that person is actually his real father. Just the way in facial and all that. But he's still accepted as a part of the family. And it makes one wonder, did the mother at the time have an affair? And so hence we've got Soichi. And so hence he's as weird as he is. For it, I give a 7.5 out of 10. I do need to read some more Junji Ito works. I'm just not ready for Uzumaki yet. I want to at least check out some of the more smaller stories that he's worked on. So, moving into World Peace. This story has been quite interesting. It does read left to right, not right to left. And as you can see here, there is another graphic novel there being Wind. For this, I give a 7.5 out of 10. it does feel like, even though it is approaching the end of the story, I'm not too sure how well the execution of the end of the story is going to be. Moving into Wind, a 7 out of 10 for this by James Tinian. I must admit, there are some things that are good in the story, but there is a lot of things in the story that need a lot of work. And that's why I give it a 7 out of 10. Terrorman. Now, this is actually a title that caught my interest in the solicitations on the website for the comic shop that I go and buy my comics. And I must admit, the idea of this particular Terrorman, who is also like a student in a school, if anything, you learn that this character has a bit of a foresight of sorts, and he tries to use his foresight to perform acts to prevent people from being injured. It's the only way I can describe it, and I think that is really quite clever in the story. I really want to check out the next volume because I want to see what happens next. Even though he's been found out to be this particular person, is he going to get more people to join his cause, or is he going to get some people who might betray him? So for this, an 8.5 out of 10. And last but not least, moving into Spriggan. My goodness. The last volume of Spriggan. I'm really surprised as to how this story ended. And I'm glad it's like in a deluxe edition, because you get to see a number or a lot more of the stories that weren't actually shown on the Netflix version. And I think one thing else that could have been maybe explored a little bit more. I know it was covered in Volume 3, but I would have liked to have seen it covered a little bit more in Volume 4. Is maybe a little bit of a little bit more of a history around the main characters, or of the main character Yu, spelled Y-U. Maybe getting some understanding of like some of the training that he's gone through, even though we get to meet someone who has trained him, but actually seeing him go through more of the training to be who he is in the story. But overall, for this story and art rating, I give it an 8 out of 10. Well, until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day. And my last question before leaving is, what manga have you been reading that you've been enjoying that might be in a slightly bigger size like this particular manga? Until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.